Hello and welcome back to Bold Moves. I've spoken about my experience relocating from Kenya to Dubai and then into London, and I've spoken about motherhood. I have spoken about career. I've spent a lot of time talking quite a bit about career. Talked about navigating the corporate space as a Black woman, and so many other things and lessons along the way. Today, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about grief. I know it's a tough one. It's a tough question. It's a tough topic. But those that know me and my history know that I used to run a nonprofit called Still a Mom that supports parents who've lost a child through miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. And so for a very long time, I worked in the space that covered grief, death, loss, grief, how to help yourself, how to grieve and get to a place where it's not so raw anymore, how to do life post loss, how to support those who are going through it, whether as friends or colleagues in the office. I have spoken extensively about supporting children. And so actually, that's what I want to focus on today. I feel like I'm in a season where I've lost some loved ones, and friends around me have been going through loss, losing spouses, losing brothers and sisters, losing children, parents, and it just hits your gut a little bit more when it's people your age that have passed away. It just hits different. And I got a friend of ours who reached out and said, "Hey, I need to grieve alongside my kids, and I don't know how to do it. Could you share some insights?" And so that's where all of this is coming from. So I have lost a baby. Let's start from there. So my husband and I lost our daughter in 2013. We had a miscarriage after that. So the first loss was more of a stillbirth because she was born still. Miscarriage, IVF that failed. And generally, we had such a tough 5 years before we got our son, who is now 7, the miracle of our life. But there's been grief, and that was a big one. That was a big one. But even before this, I lost my dad when I was 10 years. And then I've lost my brother. And so there's that thread on grief. And then I have had the honor of working alongside psychologists and therapists and amazing people, and just learning and healing along the way throughout the 8 years that I ran Still a Mom. So I'm sharing this from two angles, from the expertise of lived experience that I know where the shoe pinches, I know where it hurts because I've been there, but also from the exposure of working with professionals. I go to therapy, still do, but I started when I started working for Still a Mom is when I was introduced to therapy, and I have a whole new respect for it, and I still do it. And so today I want us to talk about navigating loss, supporting children through grief. And so let's talk about how we grieve as adults is different than how children grieve. And this is because for us, we have the words to explain our feelings. We can tell how we are. We know we are sad. We know we are angry. I know I am frustrated. Children behave in a way sort of because they can't quite say I am frustrated. They may throw a meltdown. They may have a tantrum, and of course, as a parent, you learn to what are they not saying? Because, their frontal cortex is not fully developed. Their language is not fully developed. They may not be able to explain to you that I am hurting. This is how I'm feeling. So what you will see is more of acting out. But I want you to know that, by the way, children grieve. Just like adults, they grieve. They notice the loss. They notice the absence. They grieve. They do not know how to explain how they are feeling, but they are feeling those things, right? So I want us sort of to start with that. And so as you are doing life around, whether you are a parent, an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, and there's been a death in the family, and this loss is going to talk about mostly the loss of a loved one. You may have to navigate the loss of a pet, the death of a pet, which, by the way, kids take really, really seriously. So let's not belittle that as well. But as you are the person around the child, right? Even if you're just a trusted adult, you don't have kids of your own, but you're a trusted adult and you hang out with this family and they have kids and they are navigating loss, how should you support them? How should you understand how they are behaving and therefore be more helpful? So let me talk about a phenomenon that is called puddle jumping that kids do. And I've seen it firsthand. So puddle jumping is when kids move from one feeling to the next, or from something going on and then they quickly move on. So for example, when I lost my brother, of course, I had many bouts of crying and sadness in the house. And I had my son. I think when I lost my brother, he was 5. But anyway, there have been times in our lives where he'll be like, "Oh, mommy, I'm missing Uncle Jimo." And I'm like, okay, like it was in the middle of play. He was just, I don't know, but I have no idea where that came from. And then we'll talk about it. Oh, really? What about him are you missing today? I miss how he used to take me to the river. And I've also been thinking about the burial. Then he'll probably have a question. Why do you bury them in a box? And why do you put soil on top? And then I will explain in light terms without going into too much detail. And then he'll be like, oh, by the way, Max is coming for a play date. He'll move right over that. That's called paddle jumping, where they just move on. They seem to have moved on, and it puzzles you how they can navigate from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. It's something kids do. Don't be surprised by it. But I wanted to flag this before I even get started. So I want to talk about the different ages, how kids behave, and what kind of support they need in each stage. So let's talk about 2 to, let's say, 5, right? So here, the kids interpret things literally, right? So at this point, when you say the words like, oh, yeah, they lost their dad, they think that he got lost, like he can't be found. They don't think he died, So you can't use euphemisms. You need to say things in a clear, simple way, where you explain, yeah, he has died. If you're also people of faith, he's gone to heaven. He's not going to be with us anymore. But you have to be careful not to say he's lost a loved one. He's, don't use such terms because they take things literally, right? So because they don't know yet what it means to die, they will have certain questions and some funny ones. And by the way, this is the age that does paddle jumping the most, where they'll ask a question, you'll explain, and then they'll move on. Or they say something that is very heavy and then quickly move on to another topic. So how can you support them? 1, answer questions appropriately, age appropriately. Don't go into too much details. This is not the time to know that he died in an accident and he was crushed and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do all of that. You could just say he was sick and then he died, in a way that's compassionate but is specific and without going into too much details. Let them lead you into the conversation. Don't offer any unnecessary details. Let the conversation be led by them, right? And the other thing which is super important is maintain routines. This will feature even with teenagers, by the way. Studies show that children respond well to routine. It's already a big deal that somebody passed away. Their house is full of guests and people, and they're surrounded by people they normally wouldn't see, right? And now bedtime has changed. Feeding times have changed. Like their world right now feels like it's so chaotic. So if you want to retain some normalcy, you want them to know that we are going through this thing as a family, but keep routines, keep bedtime in a way that's, of course, normal. Don't like sort of over now hide everything away and pretend nothing has happened. But try and keep up routines, because that's where they anchor themselves. I remember when I was a young mom, learning that even before children can learn time, can tell, oh, it's 12 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. They know, even when they're babies, that it's time for the big sleep. It's starting to be dark. By the things you do, they see it's getting dark, then you bathe them, then they get a massage, then they get changed, then you read them a story, and now they know it's night, even if they can't say it's 7 p.m. So children know that normalcy is like, we are good when there's, after this usually comes this, and then next, and then next. There's a routine. So keep that going. So that's your 2 to 5 year olds. It's quite simple. And at the same time, here you can also use pets to teach. Even the next age group as well, you can use pets to teach if a pet has died, or when you can also use nature. Flowers die, show them the parallel in the world that they understand. The second age is, let's say, 5 to 10, 6 to 10, because I think I need 2 to 5, 6 to 10. In this space, they are beginning to understand that death is permanent, that the person will not come back again. So when you talk about somebody has died, they are beginning to understand, the weight, the heartbreakingness of the fact that I will never see so and so. That's a good thing to remember when you talk to them. That being said, they are also in an interesting psychological space of magical thinking. Remember, this is the times also the kind of movies they are watching or programs that they are watching. There's a lot of make believe, right? So sometimes they will believe that there's something maybe they did. Maybe they were angry with that parent or they were angry with that person and they went to bed thinking, I don't like that person at all. And they feel that maybe because of their thoughts, they made that person disappear. They made that person go away. And so there's a bit of magical thinking in their head. And that's why, we see a lot of superhero content, for that age as well. So how can you support them? Now, with regard to, okay, let me take a step back a little bit. You might see aggressive play behavior. You might see in terms of the kind of behavior that materializes. Because remember, they are still at an age where they might not fully articulate how they are feeling. They might behave it out. So you might see aggressive play. You might notice that they're having nightmares or things like that. So those are the things, those are some of the things to watch out for. And that is why psychologists and therapists love to use art. Art therapy, where if they're angry, they can draw how they're feeling and color it. And you'll see they'll color it red or they'll draw bold zigzag lines they're trying to help you visualize how over here it feels or over here in their heart, how it feels to them. And art therapy, by the way, fantastic. It really helps kids to really have an outlet of how they're feeling. So then how do we support them? Here, I would say, again, maintain routines. But also have more detailed age-appropriate conversations as well. And then also maintain modeling how to grieve. Model grieving yourself. Now, when I was running Still a Mom, I used to have parents who would tell me, it's difficult when I am a mom. In my case, for example, I lost my first child. So I didn't have to parent while I was grieving, right? I have had to parent while I was grieving later on, my brother, for example, but I didn't have to have other children who were in the house when our baby died, So with parents, though, who that happened, they would feel like, how do I grieve while I'm also raising these children? And one of the things we talk about is modeling how to grieve, is showing that even you're feeling it. You're feeling the sadness. And it's a delicate balance, because there's a mom who one day came and told me that her daughter said, I don't know whether you miss my sister. I never see you cry. Are you never sad? And she was taken aback and surprised and actually quite sad, because she used to cry in her bedroom thinking that she's sparing the daughter to see her in this brokenness state. And she realized, and she was like, actually, no, I was crying and then I'd wash my face because I didn't want to make you sad. And she realized that her daughter would have loved, who was I think 9 or 10, would have loved to just see grief in action. So I'm not saying you need to become a pile of rubble and just always be broken and heartbroken in front of your children. But at the same time, you need to show them how they can navigate their own feelings, that it's okay that they are missing that person, that they are angry a little bit, that they are sad, because you're feeling the same. And sometimes there are days I just sit up and say, I wonder how it would be if my dad was alive right now. Or I wonder, I really miss my brother and I used to love how he used to do that. And then my son will be like, oh yeah, Uncle Jemo used to do blah, blah, XYZ with me. And then we have a really good conversation and then we move on from that situation. I've since shared about our daughter with Keith. He knows that he has an older sister who used to be called Layla, who died a little too early and who went to be with Jesus, and we talk about it. And it's been very interesting because like right now, we are surrounded by friends. I actually have 2 friends who have daughters aged 12 and 13, and my daughter right now would have been 12. And so my grief has been a bit raw of late, and it's been feeling very real and very sad, because I can see who she'd have become, how maybe she'd have looked like. I mean, I'm just, it's been raw. And sometimes also when my son is hanging out with these girls and he realizes, he loves to stay in houses where there are other children. And he's like, the other day he came home and told me, Mom, I don't like being an only child. I wish Layla was still alive. I wish I had a brother or a sister that I can play with. Of course, I know even children with bigger families still feel like maybe if they are the last one, they wish that they had a little brother or little sister. But we had a really good conversation about it, and we talked about, oh yeah, I also feel like that, and I can't even begin to imagine what that would have been fun like. So allowing that space to talk and for them to know that they can come and have a conversation with you without you breaking down, without you being angry with them, but keeping that open space, and you modeling grieving where you're balanced, but also showing that you also have feelings. I want to speak a little bit as an adult here and say, do not belittle children. Don't think that they don't understand. Now, I said I lost my dad when I was 10. My experience was not the best. I remember that my sister picked me from school. I was in grade 4. I was in standard 4, as we used to call it, and it was closing day. And my mom was supposed to have come to pick me up, but my older sister, came to pick me up, and she looks like she had been crying. I didn't know that my dad had passed on just like 2-3 days before, and so we went home. She left me at a neighbor's because I think they never wanted me to come home to this house full of visitors, and there were prayers that were going on every evening, and so nobody ever broke the news to me, right? So I came from my friend's house, and then I think I even had a sleepover. At that time I was just excited that I've come home and I'm allowed to be having a sleepover at my friend's house. Oh, what good fortune this is. I just didn't know that they were trying to avoid for me to experience all of this. But of course I couldn't have gone away for long. 2 days later, I'm home. There are the evening prayers. I think the funeral was supposed to be the day after. And then the preacher who was preaching says, he was preaching about that verse, that chapter that talks about Jesus has gone to prepare a home for us, and when the home is ready, he'll come. And so he made the statement that, Kyungas, now my dad's name, home has been ready, and the Lord has come for him. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the first time I had heard that my dad had died, had passed away from a third party during a sermon, And I have always tried to understand that the adults in the room were probably scared to break the news to me or to tell me, but I would say never do that. Don't let your child hear from another source, especially if it is a really close person that they loved and they were hanging out, that person was in their life. Please, you be the one to break the news in a way that they can understand and probably ask questions, hug them, and let them feel the things that they're feeling, but don't let them hear that from somewhere else. So that's your 5 to 10. Now let's talk about adolescents and teenagers all the way to, young adults. Now this is a sensitive stage because there's so much change going on in the child's life. They are navigating that balance between they are sort of living the independence of home and trying to figure out who they are for themselves, and peers. They don't want to look different or feel different or look weak in front of their friends, so there's this thing that's going on in their life. There's some sort of crisis of identity. Who am I? Away from my mom and my dad, they're starting to listen more to their peers, and they care how their peers view them. So all of that is something you need to bear in mind. Now, how they will process with the grief is that there might be a lot of anger. They're going to be behavior that looks like they're acting out. Not all of them, some of them, and here is a big one to watch out for, because that's where behaviors like drug abuse, they can easily sneak in, right? Because they're looking for ways to numb the pain. They're no longer a little person who can run to mommy and daddy for a hug. Hopefully we raise our child where they can always come home and they can always come to mom and papa and they can get their hugs and they can come and feel the things they're feeling. But they're still navigating all of that. And so sometimes they may over-focus in school, or you might start to notice they're now not doing very well. They're skipping classes, There's that element of the behavior you may see. So I want you to think and remember, especially if they're a good kid, that this is a good kid. They are just feeling the way they are feeling because of what they have gone through. And so, bear that in mind. So how do you support adolescents and teenagers? And how do you walk past, for example, what looks like reckless behavior? I would say encourage expression. Encourage for them to feel like this is a safe space. We talk about it, And I would like to quote a book here, and I would encourage you to buy it. It's one of those books that I bought and I have gone back time and time again. It's called Option B. It's the lesser known book of Sheryl Sandberg. People know her for the book Lean In, but she also wrote Option B by her and psychologist Adam Grant. And she talks about when her husband died and how she navigated grieving with her kids. And they had rules where if you want to talk about it, if you want us to cry, you cry, you have permission to talk about it. How was your day? Especially for a certain duration of time, she expected there would be anger and just generally bouts of feelings, right? And she created that safe space where we're not letting go of our, we're still going to school. We're still, especially when the immediacy of the grief and the loss has happened, and if there's been a funeral and a burial that has happened, and life is starting to take some sort of normalcy, but allowing them to feel that you can always come here and vent. It's safe. So let's create those safe environments. Number two, you would expect that adolescents and teens don't need to keep routines, but please keep the routine. Again, it's one of the things that reminds them that my entire life hasn't collapsed. There's so much going on around me. It feels like everything is chaotic, but this one thing stays the same. So retain routines. The thing I would say with regards also that would have to do with the safe environment is find ways to memorialize the person who was lost, right? It could be give them a journal, help them to write on the journal. It could be looking for like a specific day, a birthday that you guys mark. And what you guys do every time, maybe during the birthday of that person or when they passed away, you sit around and say, what do you miss the most? What did you love about that person? It could be, if it was like the death of a pet, that you let them bury them and they shared and said what are the things that they loved about that pet, right? But the idea here is to create in the house, right, in the home. And this also could be a bit more sensitive during holiday season, Christmas, Easter, when the absence of that person is felt the most, to create your own traditions and to always include that person wherever possible in your lives, in the memorialization, so that they don't feel like you guys are working so hard. The adults in the room are working so hard to forget this person. No, let them know that, by the way, you can sit in your heart, that your heart has capacity for two things. You can love and be so grateful, but you can also be hurting and missing somebody so much, that you can be grateful and missing them, that you can be happy and sad that you miss that person, like the duality of life. They can get to sit with all of these feelings together. And I say that because I remember in Still a Mom, when we would begin to deal with like a new person who's come to us, there were these intake forms where people would, the questions were like describe how you're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally. I'm angry, I'm having trouble eating, or this and this is going on. And there are so many times that, and it broke my heart each time, especially for men who would tell you, I don't know how I'm feeling. I don't even know what to take. And then you realize that they grew up in homes where there were no crying, tears show weakness, men don't cry, boys don't cry. Or nobody ever showed them how to navigate their difficult feelings. And now as adults, they are overflowing all over. They're being triggered by something, and now their grief is flowing all over and their feelings are flowing all over, hurting the people around them, but they themselves cannot even begin to articulate how they feel. So I hope this has been helpful in some way. If you are walking your kids through the loss of an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent, a pet, I know that sounds off, but no, yes, it's still important. If there's grief in some way, shape, or form, please create and maintain routines. Create a safe environment where you can discuss things about grief and loss and how they are feeling and how you're doing throughout the healing journey. And please answer questions and talk in an age appropriate way. Everybody's child is different. I know I gave ranges. Some children are a little bit more exposed. So be careful and be aware of your children's maturity and navigate them accordingly. But do not shy away from this topic. And by all means, also you model grieving. I hope this has been helpful to you. I know it's a much more difficult conversation than to talk about careers and other happy things, but I feel like this is the usualness of life. That our life is, the human experience is mixed of all these joyous, happy, and sad, and heartbreaking moments, and we need to navigate all of that, and we have to do it with the children that are in our lives, whether the kids are ours or we are a trusted adult that is around those children. So please let me know if this was helpful. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. I am, again, extremely grateful that I spent a ton of time with therapists and psychologists. I did take a certificate, I think, in counseling psychology. So, I know some information. If there's something I don't know, happy to ask somebody else who's more trained and professionally, but I'm here to support you. Please like, follow, leave a review, drop me an email on wanjirukihusa@gmail.com, and I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you very much and have a good week.